You must listen to yourself. And we'll see how well you can do with that. We'll see how much you can listen to me, because many times we're just running to that next place to try to find whatever's going to make us feel better, so we don't give ourselves enough time. Or in other cases, we're running from ourselves, and that's why we don't want to listen or stay in one place. And I've done that one a lot. But I just had an experience today that I knew was going to come somehow. I didn't know why on this date, but it did. And it began when I was awakened at 4 o'clock in the morning and urged, and I couldn't go back to sleep, but I was urged to do a channeling session, which I did. I recorded it this morning. It's about 12, 13 minutes long or something like that. I'd love for you to hear it because I wanted to give everyone a little more information about what's going on, and that's how it came through when I got awakened at that time. This happens for me quite a bit. You have intuition. We all do. We don't always trust it. If we did, we would have very different lives if all of us could do that. Because see, we were each given something that we were meant to do in the world, and it's valuable, and our intuition tells us what that is. And if we could follow it, we would be living lives that would just feel wonderful, but we don't always do it. But it takes time and practice and effort to want to uncover who you are and what your gifts are, and then become brave enough and courageous enough to own them and bring them to the world. That's really what it is about anyone's life. There are certain people who come into the world and decide, I'm going to be a great leader, and they just go on and do that. That doesn't mean you can't do it either, because it just means when it shows up in your life. Every single person is different, and it shows up in their lives at different times. And after I did the channeling session, and they wanted me to use the dream, because that's what this is about. Your dream is real. Whatever dream you had in your life that you may have had when you were a child, it's still real, and it's probably in front of you now, waiting for you to act upon it and to believe yourself. And if you listen enough and go over it enough and over time, you probably might get there. Several messages I've put out, any advice, we're talking about that very thing, about you might believe us now. You might believe us, because I didn't. That's what was going on. When I first started receiving information, which was in 1988, that was a video that I heard this morning again to remind me that there were many people who are in the world who would remember these dates, just like I did with 2012, but there are more, of times that our world changes, and we're moving through that now, and I knew that, but I wasn't going to talk about it. And before I came and I was going to do this video, I heard them say to me, "You were disingenuous." I go, "What? What does that mean?" Disingenuous. And that pretending you know less than you know. And that's what I've been doing, because I didn't want people to judge me. How did I know this stuff? How did it come to me? You have done the same thing in certain ways, because you know that old thing, if only I had known, if I had if I could have done it then. We do that all the time because we hear the direction that we're receiving the information, and then we act against it. We decide not to do it. And I've done it a lot, and I'm no longer doing that, however, because we're in a different time in our world, and I know how important my work is and how valuable it is. So this morning, a few days ago, last week, I was asked to write a foreword for a book. And this is Carol Collins. She doesn't know this story yet, and I'm going to send it to her later, but I had to do this now. But Carol is a colleague, and she does channeling like I do and receives information, but she only started doing it in 2019. Now, and I'm looking at her stuff and seeing her, and I go, how did she get to this place? And she sold books, and she's in this place. How did she own herself earlier than I did? I've been doing this a long time, and I was hiding out. I didn't even want to do live channeling. I hid everything from everyone for years, for decades. Didn't want you to know what I was doing, even though it was what I used to create everything I've done in my life. It was what I've used to heal serious physical illnesses. Just things that went on with me that I was able to move over. And then I created programs. I created all sorts of things with this intuition. And I didn't want to talk about it. And it's because it seems strange to me, because I didn't study all of this stuff like everyone else. You might know, I didn't even discover I had ADHD until I was 70 years old. So that kind of explained why I didn't want to sit down and read all the time, which was, kind of challenging for me because you start thinking something's wrong with you. But no, there's nothing wrong with anyone. We just have to work with our strengths. And my strength was receiving information. So as I started to sit down to read Carol's book, I looked at the date of the first, where it began, the first chapter, and it said April 11th, 2021. And as I'm sitting there, and I knew it, I hear things all the time, and I heard, go and look what we told you. This is my guide. And I hear this all the time, and the conversation is like that. And when I'm reading, as I was beginning to read Carol's, I was so impressed with the fact that she is just writing this in the way that she hears it, just like I do. We hear this all the time. And she's putting it together, but because she came at it later and all, it was something about that gave me more permission to own who I am. That's what we all do. Once we move through something and discover something and give it to others, then they have the permission to own who they are. That's all we're ever trying to do. As I said, I'm doing authenticity coaching because that's the only thing that allows you to have this fulfilled life, the one that you wanted to have. So when I looked at the date, and I'm reading Carol's things, and I heard my Wilhelm say to me, yeah, go look and see what we gave you on that day. And this is not accidental. And this is why I've always used dates in some of the messages that come through, because it's a thing that gives me grounding and anchoring or glimpses of what I'm supposed to do. You have the same thing. They may show up in different ways in your life, but there's something that has been there, that has shown up, that's trying to give you information about this is what you could do to make your life better. That's all. That's all we're doing, is being guided by guide, your God, your Jesus, whoever you think of that is doing that, the universe, God. It's all that is. That's what it is. But we're all being guided, but we have to accept it. So then when I said, okay, I'll go and I'm reluctant. Let me go look and see what the message is. And this, I want you to hear it because there's no way I could have made this up. And it was April 21st of 2021. And again, this is just my thing with the dates. That's my guidance to show me I'm in the right place. And the message was, you have always been in the right place in your life, and we can prove it. That one got me right there. But it's the same for you. We've always been, all people have been in the right place at the right time. We just don't act with what we're given, or we don't understand it, and we figure it out later, but we're always in that right place. Nothing has ever gone wrong. And then as I start to read this, it says, and we can prove it. We wanted Roger to use that precise title for many reasons which will be revealed. Now, I didn't know what that meant. That was more than a year ago. That was of 2021. I had no idea. But when I hear things, I just write them down. I know that they will show up later and make sense to me. That's the kind of trust that I've developed. Now, there were times where I would not act on things that I hear, that intuition, like you don't. I don't do that anymore. If I get some guidance, that nudge, I'm going to check it out. I'm going to look, and that's what I do. Reluctantly sometimes, but I always do it. And then what comes out of that is that, as we have said, you are moving through a massive restructuring, and each of you is evolving, becoming new, and discovering greater portions of yourselves that have always existed. Still, due to the very mysterious nature of evolvement, these things escape your awareness. None of us have understood what's gone on in the world in the last few years, and so you've been looking at that in your life as well. Why is this all happening? You're evolving. You wouldn't be in the world unless that, we're always doing it, but this is a time where you might notice it. More than a year ago, as your current pandemic surfaced, we said you have been through this before. We had Roger mysteriously studying the history of the past 100 years and several centuries, and he didn't understand why he was doing so. Again, that sentence is meant to make you aware that the elusive part of your thoughts and dreams are intentional and exist for a reason you always discover. Last night, Roger joined a group on Clubhouse where they each had discovered they channeled or received information in a manner similar to Roger. They also acknowledged the importance of the differences in how they each receive information, so others will permit themselves to hear their guides, for you all do have them. During the group, Roger would speak and instantly know it was us providing him information because he didn't know what he had said, but others received it and reacted. Roger is becoming comfortable with this process which he cannot explain in human terms. This morning we had it make more sense. Roger stumbled upon a recording of a book entitled Spiritual Reconstruction by Mary Bruce Wallace. I have no memory of this or even writing it. As Roger listened, he thought this must be a current author, as the events and even some of this country's reference spoke to of the present times. Roger did some research to discover this book was published more than 100 years ago. That discovery caused Roger to look further to discover he had also written The Thinning of the Veil, published in 1919, which is what we said is occurring now, but we called it your restructuring. You are meant to accept more of who you are, even though you may not understand it entirely. However, you will be fine if you do. That's what I was giving. All of this, none of this is accidental. We're moving through something where we're meant to own more of ourselves. We're meant to expand and evolve and become more. All of us, every single person. And we're going to do it in different ways. That's why that little incident where we could see all the different channels, and there are many people do what I do, but we do it differently. You're supposed to do what you're doing differently. Every single person comes into the world to bring something. And what I was given is work and a philosophy to help people evolve into who they're meant to be in terms of becoming your authentic self. And what that means is that you no longer doubt who you are. You no longer have fear and this insecurity and lack of self-confidence or self-esteem and all. You just don't. And I had to work through that because, see, I've hidden this forever. Carol's out there doing a book, and what she said, I said, okay, Carol, I'll write the foreword, but I've been hiding out. And she said to me, and now I can see this is going to happen. She says, you won't be hiding anymore. And because I'm going to be on the back cover of this book. And so it's going to be there. And this is why I knew I had to change what I was doing with my program too. But I was resistant because I have this thing where I want to try to help everyone. Let me try to give everyone, but it doesn't matter because you're not going to do it. We only do something when we can see or we're willing to become happy. That's what I said, willing to become who we could be. But most times we're afraid. And the price doesn't matter. And I kept seeing that. And so, but I have to take care of me because we're moving into this next period of our world where you're going to want to take care of you. That's what you're here for. That's why you exist. And that means allowing yourself to become abundant. And we're moving through that shift. As I've said, in our world, we're going to see a massive restructuring of the wealth and income in this world. But we have to be willing to accept who we are. And my program is only about having you understand and accept your worth and your authenticity so you can live the life you are meant to live. That's what I wanted to have, and I hope you listen to all of this and help put the dream in there too, because that was fascinating, because some of you might go through what I did because I put my dream away because I didn't want anybody to know. And then when people started seeing it, friends might leave, because sometimes when you change, the people that you are around can't handle that. That's okay. You have to own who you are and you have to keep moving. And this is the empowerment that I get my clients to come to so that you can live this full life.